Hello, I want to talk about running audio on Linux. I have some information here on the screen about the system I'm using. I'm using Debian. I am using KDE, Plasma 6.3. I'm on the stable version of Debian currently, which is Debian 13, aka Trixie. I'm using just a little B-Link SER, one of these little like Intel NUC form factor machines. And you can see it has an older GPU or an older CPU, an AMD Ryzen 7 5800H. This is about a 5-year-old CPU, I think. So nothing fancy for sure. I do have about 32 gigs of RAM. That's probably 4 gigs is probably for the GPU. But anyway, I got plenty of RAM. I have just an M2 NVMe drive. And so anyway, the point is my system is nothing fancy. And that's the great thing about Linux. You can run Linux on older hardware. So now I should talk a little bit about why I'm doing this video, I guess. So whenever there's like a major event in the Windows world, there tends to be an uptick in people who are looking to jump to Linux. I don't know how much of that is just talk, but you see stuff online these days about people saying maybe it's time to finally move to Linux because support for Windows 10 ended in October of 2025. And so a lot of people are looking to maybe not upgrade to Windows 11 and try Linux. But I think this time it's compounded by the fact that a lot of people don't like Windows 11 for other reasons than just having to do an OS upgrade. A lot of people don't like the Copilot stuff and the AI stuff and how Windows is becoming more invasive, the telemetry, the pop-ups, the advertisements, the pre-installed Disney Plus app and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not singling out Disney, just there's random apps installed, that you may or may not want or you may not want. So I think there's a little bit more to it this time than just regular OS upgrade laziness that people don't want to have to go through. So I thought it'd be a good time to talk about my setup on Linux because I do use Linux full time in my personal life. There have been some things in the last, a few years, I guess, that have really made it possible for me to run full-time, run Linux full-time and do audio in Linux. For many years, I've used Linux on and off, but the problem was always that there were those last couple pieces were always missing to get audio going. So I'm going to talk about how I set it up. You don't have to do this exact setup, but again, this is just an overview of what I'm doing. I'm using Debian. With any of the major distributions, you should be able to do this stuff. Just my general advice, if you're new to Linux, is I would stay away from any of the sort of flavor of the month distributions. And I don't mean that in a derogatory term. I just mean there's a lot of distributions or a lot of distros in Linux. If you don't want to do Debian, because Debian might not be quite as beginner friendly, if you want something out of the box that works good for audio, Ubuntu Studio is there, and it comes, sorry, there's some noise in the background. It comes with different desktops. I think by default it is by KDE Plasma, so it would look like my computer here more or less. I think you do have some other options though. Another popular one that's not geared towards audio but is very popular and a lot of people like it, easy to get going with, is Linux Mint. So you could try Linux Mint if you want to try that. The cool thing about Linux Mint is it does allow you to download it with different desktop environments pre-configured. So if you don't like KDE, if you want to go with XFCE or Cinnamon, I think Cinnamon is actually the default. If you want to go with Cinnamon, you can do that. Let's see. Also, Fedora is another one that is very popular. I like Fedora. I just decided not to use it, but it's a great one. So that's another one you can try out. So again, I would stick with some of the major distributions and the ones that are kind of easier to get going with, especially if you're new to Linux. So let's talk about Linux audio history, and I'm going to use Reaper. I will talk about DAWs or digital audio workstations or DAWs or whatever you want to call them. I will talk about those separately, but I'm going to give you a little background on audio in Linux. So if you are in Reaper or whatever audio app you're using, and you check the audio system, you're going to have one or two or all three of these different options. You're going to have ALSA as an option, ALSA. That's the original audio backend for Linux. It's fairly old and it's had some limitations that make it not great. And then you're going to have Pulse Audio, which is actually pretty decent, but it's not good for like pro audio and stuff. And then you're going to have Jack, which for a long time has been the quote-unquote pro audio solution. It allows you to get pretty low latency or very low latency if you want that. It allows for some complex routing, so you could route audio between apps. On Windows they have like Rewire. I don't know if it's still around, but Rewire, that kind of thing, so you can bounce audio between different audio applications if you want. So Jack has that kind of functionality. However, it is a pain, at least in my experience. It was always a pain to set up and just configure, and it worked okay, but it was hard to manage. So the solution these days, and what comes installed on all the distributions, maybe for sure it comes on installed on Debian 13, on Fedora, maybe on Mint, I'm not sure. I think on Ubuntu Studio it's the default, but the default these days is called PipeWire. PipeWire is kind of an interesting project because I haven't seen any apps yet that directly interface with PipeWire other than some of the routing apps, which we'll look at later. What PipeWire does is it tells you right here. I'll zoom in a little bit. It says it provides seamless support for Pulse Audio, Jack, ALSA, and GStreamer. We're not going to talk about GStreamer because I've never used it, but these three we just looked at: ALSA, Pulse Audio, and Jack. And what this means is that when I'm here in Reaper choosing my audio system, my audio backend, as far as Reaper knows, it's using Jack, but actually it's using PipeWire. And if I choose ALSA, as far as Reaper knows, it's using ALSA, but actually it's using PipeWire. And same thing for Pulse Audio. It's actually PipeWire. And that's because PipeWire has, I guess you'd call them compatibility layers that present PipeWire to applications as Jack, ALSA, and Pulse Audio. And this is important because one of the problems with Linux has been there's these different audio systems, and they work in different ways, and they don't work together in different ways. And by basically providing a common backend for all of them, you're able to use apps together that might not use the same audio system. So let's say you had an app that only used ALSA. Well, you couldn't really use that with Jack. Or you had an app that only used Pulse Audio. You couldn't really use that with ALSA or Jack or something. But what PipeWire does is it allows you to use all these things. It doesn't matter what app or what audio system your app uses, you can use them all in PipeWire and do some routing. And we're going to look at that routing in a bit too. But actually, we'll look at it now because I did want to check on it. So there's a few apps to handle the routing for PipeWire. The first one, I'm just going to show you because it's available on every distribution in the repository. For instance, in Debian, it's here. It's called Helvum, Helvum. It's available by default in the Debian distribution. Now the thing is, it's kind of messy. It's one of the older ones, I think, for controlling PipeWire. It's a PipeWire patch bay, you can see. So I don't ever use it. I just have it installed here kind of for reference. But you can kind of see what it's getting at. I'll show you some nicer ones in a second. But you can kind of see the idea here if I move some of the things around and make it a little cleaner, in that you can see that it allows you to route audio between applications. So here's like OBS that I'm recording on currently. Here, the inputs and outputs from my Scarlett 4i4, my Focusrite Scarlett 4i4 interface, my webcam, because it has a microphone in it. If I wanted to capture a horrible quality audio through there, I could do that. Here's Reaper, and it's really cool because you add more apps and stuff, and you can route things. And so if you want to do a capture from a YouTube video and you want to sample something or whatever, you just play that in your browser and it would show up a new thing here for Firefox or for Chrome or whatever you're using, Chromium, and you could grab the audio from there and drag it into Reaper, and you can add more inputs to Reaper just within Reaper itself, and you'd have more inputs here. So this is the kind of functionality that PipeWire gives you. Now let's just switch over to some of the other ones because I don't like Helvum very much. I'm going to switch over to one called PatChance. Now PatChance, I can zoom in on this one too, looks a lot nicer. First of all, it's not available by default in all repositories. So like if you look for it in Debian, it's not in there. I had to build this one from source, and that's a thing you will have to do in Linux at some point. You'll have to build things from source. It's not that scary, but you will have to do it. And I built this one from source. You can see it looks a lot better because it gives you the option to turn off some of the other stuff that you're not using. Like I'm turning off MIDI routing, for instance, because I'm not using that currently. And so this gives you kind of a better idea of what's actually going on. So this one's pretty good. Now there are some even newer ones, and I'll show you one I like. It's actually open in the background here. There's a newer one I like called Cable. And Cable gives you some other options. You can see it has a pretty nice interface here, very similar to Pet Chance. Shows you what's going on. It has this, the screen expands and shrinks really nicely. It's a really great interface. But there's OBS. There's my Reaper inputs, Reaper outputs. You can choose to separate these things or not. You can choose how they're displayed. But the cool thing that we have here is a bunch of other stuff on top. If you go to audio, this is just a different way that you can see your routing connections. I'm not doing anything with MIDI currently. Graph is what I was looking at a second ago. PW top will show you some backend information about what is actually currently using your PipeWire system. But what I really wanted to show you is this thing here. So this is the sort of the main screen with Cable. And the cool thing here, I'm not going to make the change now, but one of the questions you might have is, well, how do I change the latency in PipeWire? Cable allows you to do that. I should do more of a deep dive, I guess, into some of these things and talk about wire plumber and that kind of stuff. But this is where you would change your latency. You can change your sample rate. Of course, I'm not going to change those things because I'm recording currently, and then you can restart the PipeWire service itself as well as Wire Plumber. Wire Plumber is kind of a different thing. It works with PipeWire, but we'll talk about that maybe in a different video. And then if you want to get to the stuff we were just looking at, you hit cables and you get here. Anyway, so something else I really want to mention too before I forget is that you're not limited to one audio interface, and I wish I had. I have a couple like little Zoom field recorders, and I was going to plug one of them in, but I forgot to do it. But basically, if you have more than one audio interface, it will show up here, and then you can route audio to and from it throughout, through your apps. So basically, if you have, let's say you had a Focusrite 2i2 or some 2-in, 2-out interface, and you really wanted to get 2 more inputs and 2 more outputs, rather than having to upgrade and buy the 4-in, 4-out version of that interface, you could just buy another 2-in, 2-out interface, and you would have 2 more ins, 2 more outs. So it can save you some money that way. Or if you have an older version of an interface, you have a Focusrite Gen 1 or something, and it's still working fine for you, but you want to have the newer 4th gen version also, but you don't want to shell out for the 4i4. You can get the new 4th gen 2i2, and then you have 2 newer preamps that give you more gain, because that's a new thing with the new Focusrites, and you can have 4 inputs, outputs that way. Or if you have other weird stuff or random stuff, like you might have a guitar pedal, a multi-effects pedal, like a Boss or a Zoom or something, and those allow you to use the pedal as an audio interface. You can plug that in, and it'll show up here as an additional interface for you to route audio from into your DAW or wherever you're doing. So really awesome in Linux because you can use multiple interfaces. You can do that technically, I guess, in Windows with this thing like the ASIO for all driver or ASIO for all. But this thing doesn't have anywhere near the I guess the configurability and that kind of stuff. And I guess it's still around. I mean, it's kind of an older project. Hasn't been updated since 2024, so I guess it's not really still viable. I think Mac you can have multiple audio interfaces too. I haven't used Mac for a while for audio, but anyway, so that's the thing with Linux. So the PipeWire is really great. It works great. Latency is great. In Reaper, you can see currently I have it 128 samples, and I get about 2.6 times 2, so I get about 5 milliseconds round trip latency. So if I'm playing bass and I want to use effects in the box in the DAW, I can do that with 5 millisecond latency, which is totally usable. So that's really awesome. And especially, like I said, I have just kind of an older system here. If you had a newer system and maybe the 4th gen interface, maybe you can get even better latency with the same sample rate with 128 samples. So, all right, so let's talk next about DAWs, actually. Digital audio workstations, DAWs. People call them different things. I call them DAWs, so just that's what I'm going with. But there is an amazing website called linuxdaw.org. And we're going to go there. Now, linuxdaw.org, despite the name, features mostly VST plugins or plugins for Linux, and we'll talk about those as well. But let's look here, linuxdaw.org. Let's just sort by tags and go to DAW or DAW. And this shows you, this is not all the DAWs that are available probably. There might be some other smaller ones or something, but this shows you a really good sampling of DAWs that are available for Linux. You have waveform. I'm starting at the end here. You have waveform, and it's pretty good. It's a little more simple. The interface is different, so if you don't like the interface for Reaper or some other kind of DAWs, you could check out waveform. That's a good one. There's a free version, and then there's a pro version. Renoise, if you do tracker stuff, then there's a tracker available. That's a very, very old, well-known tracker. Here's Reaper, of course. Some of the other ones I'm not sure about. I've never used them. Ardour is like the old school one for Linux. It's been around forever, but I have ironically just never used it. Bitwig is huge these days. Big community, amazing DAW. I've only used like a demo version or something like that. But it's fully supported for Linux. There's a Linux version for it. Not familiar with these other small ones, but Presonus Studio One is here. If you're a Studio One user, that's available. And then some of the other ones, again, not sure about some of these other ones here. But as you can see, there's a growing list of DAWs that are available for Linux. Now, I'm going to talk about using Windows VSTs in Linux in a little bit. But also you can use Windows, well, I shouldn't say you can, I mean, it's hit or miss, but you can use some Windows DAWs in Linux via Wine. The only one I'm actually thinking about is Ableton Live, because that's the only one I've tried. Ableton Live will run in Linux via Wine. I'm not sure about the latest version because I haven't tried it, but I have a pared down version that I got, with some software that I bought or with some hardware that I bought or something. And that one, I forget what version it was, but it was the version before the newest one. But anyway, the point is Ableton Live may work if you have that and you want to run it in in Wine. The thing with Wine to be aware of is that if you want to get real time or low latency audio, you need to use Wine ASIO or Wine ASIO. So you would install Wine like normal, and then you have to go through the process of adding Wine ASIO to your Wine install. So anyway, you may, if you have a DAW that's Windows only, you may have luck getting it to run in Linux. You can check online, I'm sure, and Google around and see if other people are doing it for sure, because there might be some people out there. So let's talk about plugins next, since we're on this page actually. Let's get rid of the DAW tag there. So plugins in Linux are pretty interesting. It's gotten a lot better. And every day I check this page, there's new stuff that's popped up. Like I didn't know that Glitch 2 is now on Linux. That's an old one. Is that one's back, huh? Okay, well, cool. I have to check that out. But yeah, so there's a huge list of plugins available on Linux. And before I even talk about that, we should talk about running Windows plugins in Linux, because that might be a question you have. There's something I guess you need to be aware of or come to terms with when you move to Linux, and that is there are going to be plugins that you just can't run. You're going to have to give up on them and say bye. There are going to be plugins that you might have paid for that will not run in Linux at all. And you're going to have to come to terms with that. So just be ready for that. But there are some plugins that you are able to run in Linux via a plugin, I guess you'd call it a converter or something, called YaBridge. And YaBridge stands for Yet Another Bridge, in case you're curious, because there are other bridge plugins that bridge Windows VST plugins to Linux. But this thing is pretty great, and it runs, you have to have Wine installed to run it. And I should give you a caveat here. As far as I know, as of several months ago when I tested this, it might be fixed now, but you have to use an older version of Wine 9.21 or older. If you use 9.22 or newer, you'll have issues with the GUIs, the graphical user interfaces on the plugins when you use them. So you have to use Wine 9.21 or older, which is kind of a bummer because Wine is already on like version 11. I mean, they're on version 10 for sure. I think there's a beta or a testing version of, yeah, see, release candidate 5 is already out. So they're moving on. So I got to check back, and hopefully the developer of YaBridge has fixed the issue to make it work on Windows 10, or sorry, Wine 10 and or 11. But that's fine. You can still procure versions of Wine 9.21. It'll be different depending on your distro, how you do that. But anyway, so what this thing does, and I'll show you the config I have for it, YaBridge status. Oh, sorry, YaBridge control status. So you can see some Windows plugins that I have converted or synced over to be VST plugins. So you can see I was trying out some of the Audio Obsession plugins, the developer Audio Obsession. Their plugins work great via YaBridge. I think I did I spell that wrong? I did. Obsession. Yeah, but Audio Obsession works great. So like any plugin that's basically just like an installer and it installs the VST, generally will work with some exceptions. But if you're getting into things where it's like there's a portal to then download the plugins and install them, like the Native Instruments plugins, or the Isotope stuff has a portal, or the UAD, like the Universal Audio stuff, has a portal. Those ones probably will not work. The portal itself might install. Like I have some of the UAD plugins that I can get the portal to install, but when it tries to download the plugins and install them, it won't work. And it's not because of iLok. iLok will actually work via Wine. I've gotten it to work before, and it'll register your plugins. It's a little buggy. Sometimes it'll lose connection if your plugins are registered in the cloud, and you have to restart the computer. I don't know how to fix it otherwise. But I don't like iLok anyway. I don't know that anyone who does like iLok. So I don't do anything iLok. So I would say that if you have any iLok plugins, and unfortunately those are some of the nicer paid, pricier plugins, that you might have to get rid of those and just move on. But anyway, just a few more things that work. I have an old installation of the Korg WaveStation, which I've always liked. So that one works even though it's an older plugin. The Valhalla plugins work. I have Valhalla Delay, Future Verb. I also have like Valhalla Shimmer. I didn't install it, but they work. They work fine. The only thing is with them, and sometimes with any of these other plugins, you got to be careful if you delete an instance of the plugin, at least in Reaper, about half the time it'll freeze Reaper and crash. So there are some things to be careful of if you're trying out these plugins. Just make sure your DAW is set to autosave your project every few minutes or something. Zplane, the developer, I have a couple plugins of theirs, and they seem to work. And then I have some other stuff here that's mostly VST2 instead of VST3. The Easy Drummer 2 works. I've owned that for a while. I think they're on Easy Drummer 3 now. I haven't tried that. And then I have some other stuff by a developer called SoundHack that works. So it's pretty good, actually. A lot of stuff works surprisingly well. You just have to test it and, cross your fingers. Maybe you get lucky. But even if it doesn't work, there is such a huge library now of stuff available for Linux. I follow some of these blogs, like the Bedroom Producers blog. And they review plugins, and they're always announcing, hey, this developer released this plugin. And I would say about a third of the time, the plugins that I see the new ones getting released by kind of smaller or medium-sized developers, I'd say about a third of them come with native Linux versions. So it's really taken off a lot. 5 or 10 years ago, it was pretty scant out there, as far as plugins. But there's some major developers that have moved all their stuff to Linux or added Linux versions. I'll just go down a list of a few of them here. Audio Damage, who's been around forever. They have a ton of their plugins available for Linux, and even some like the old classic stuff, like EOS is there, Dubstation, Discord. These are old kind of classic standard VST plugins that have been around for, I don't even know how many years at this point, as well as the newer stuff. It's being ported or being released on Linux. They support the newer Clap version, which is cool too. The new Clap format, which I think allows developers to not have to deal with Steinberg licensing for VSTs. So Audio Damage is there. Audio Thing is here. They have a ton of great stuff. If you like the Heinbach collaborations they've done. Those are here. Everything is here. They have a massive library. So, even if you have to give up some of your plugins that you might have used on Windows that you can't get working on Linux, there might be stuff to replace it, or at least new stuff to try that maybe you just haven't tried before because you just haven't looked at some of these developers' audio thing. I should mention I don't think I saw Air Windows on the list here, but if you follow Chris from Air Windows, who has a very large presence online, he has a YouTube channel. The Air Windows plugins are available here, which is crazy. This Air Windows consolidated one is sort of his overview or his container for all of his plugins, and he's got dozens of really good plugins in here. So Air Windows is there. I'll go through a few more, the big ones, or at least the big ones that I know about. Disco DSP, they have like a couple Nord Lead emulations that are good. They have the OBX emulation that's available. The GVST plugins are super old. I mean, not old as in they don't work. They've just been around forever, but they've been on Linux for a long time too. That was one of the first developers I noticed who ported everything to Linux. The HY plugins, these are pretty good. Some people like these. What else we got? I'm just going down some kind of the list. Oh, Sine Vibes. I don't have any Sine Vibes plugins, but I know they're really popular. Their stuff is all here. And what else? Yuhi. Yeah. Yuhi is a huge developer with some amazing sounding plugins. Diva is listed by a lot of people as one of the best plugins that you can get. So anyway, the point is there is a lot of stuff here. And every few days when I check linux.org, there's new stuff. Like I said, when I checked yesterday, I don't think anything, these top 5 plugins were not even here. So I got to look at them and see what they are, because man, it's crazy. It's really crazy how much stuff is available for Linux. So anyway, that's the plugin side. Linux.org is your go-to resource for Linux plugins because there's so much stuff. So the last thing to talk about, I think, is the audio interface itself, because that's one of the things you have to sort out. Any audio interface that's USB class compliant will work in Linux. Okay, and you say, well, what does that mean? Well, basically, that's any audio interface. Every audio interface is USB class compliant. So you plug it in, you can get inputs, you can get outputs, it'll work. But beyond that, things can get tricky. If your audio interface has a software control panel, like Focusrite has this, I'm trying to type while I talk. Focusrite has the Focusrite control panel that does not run in Linux. It's only Windows and Mac, and maybe they have like an iPhone version or something too. But you're limited because those control panels will not run in Linux. So there are other audio interfaces that kind of face this issue. I think like the Audient EVO stuff. I'm looking at a list over here because I forgot. The Audient EVO plugins, I think, require software to handle routing things. The UAD Apollo stuff obviously requires a software component because that's how you load the apps onto the actual interface. RME, I think, has Total Mix, but what I'm going to get into here is that there are community or third-party plugins for Linux that allow you to control these things, and I'll talk about that in a second. But some of the other, on the flip side, if you have an audio interface that has all the controls on the device itself, like hardware based with more buttons and stuff, then you might not have to worry about this. The Motu M2, M4, M6, I think, are hardware based. I don't think they have a software component at all. The UAD Volt stuff is hardware based, as compared to the UAD Apollo, which is very software based. The UAD Volt is hardware based. The SSL, the smaller audio interfaces, are hardware based. Behringer, UMC, I've never used them, but I think they're hardware based. So it depends on what you have. So if you have an interface that requires a software component like Focusrite's Focus Control or Focusrite Control to manage routing and stuff, you'll have to find a way to handle that. Now, the old way to handle this, which was not just for Focusrite but for anything, was to use this thing called Also Mixer. And this thing is a nightmare. So I'll show you what this looks like. If I wanted to enable monitoring on channel 2, where do you do it? I'm looking at all the settings here and stuff, and you have to configure a mix. You have to route the appropriate input line input, which I guess would be one of these ones. Oh, this is for mute. You have to route this one somehow into a mix, and then you have to control the mix. I forget how to even do it. So anyway, the point is, this is a nightmare. No one wants to do this. So fortunately for Focusrite, which is one of the most popular audio interfaces for people making music in their bedrooms, fortunately, Focusrite has this thing called ALSA Scarlett. I can't spell it. GUI or GUI. ALSA Scarlett GUI by Jeffrey Bennett. Now, if you use this thing, you should give Jeffrey Bennett some money. He has a donation thing here on the side. I think I've given him money in the past because this is a product that I would pay for. This, I think, is better than Focusrite's own Focusrite control. And I'm going to show you what it looks like here. So basically, Jeffrey Bennett has been working on this for a long time, for many years. And it's compatible with a whole bunch of Focusrite stuff. He lists them all here. I can zoom in a bit in case you have a smaller screen. This thing supports the Scarlett 1st Gen, 2nd Gen, 3rd Gen, 4th Gen. It looks like all of them for the Focusrite Scarletts. And then it supports the Clarets. I'm not sure if it's all the Clarets, but that's a lot of, maybe that's all of them. And then it supports the Vocasters. And this is a project he worked on, but reportedly, when he was getting ready to upgrade this thing to work on the Gen 4 interfaces, supposedly Focusrite reached out to him and provided him with development test hardware and some other information, low-level driver information or something that made it possible for him to make this product even better. So that's why the ALSA Scarlett GUI is amazing. It's like, as far as I know, like the biggest success story for third-party apps, to control your audio interfaces. It's available in the ALSA Scarlett. It's available in the Debian repository, and it's probably available in, or possibly available in, whatever repository you're using for your Linux distro. So super easy to install. Just at least in Debian, just an app to install, ALSA Scarlett GUI. So let me show you what it does. There's kind of some pictures here actually which might illustrate things better, but it gives you a routing matrix. It gives you a mixer, which is not displayed here, and then it gives you kind of an overview. So let me get rid of some of this stuff. I can't make this any bigger, I'm sorry, but this is the main panel here. You can control the the inputs and outputs. Turn your switch the interfaces from instrument to line, high Z to low Z, but it gives you this routing mixer. And this thing, I'm not going to lie, the learning curve is steep. I think because it gives you full access to everything. So it just takes some time to kind of wrap your head around what is going on here. But you set up the routing, and then you don't have to use the mixer if you want to do some very simple routing. But if you want to actually have control over levels and that kind of thing, then you can use the mixer also. So the mixer is controlled by what's coming into the top and what's going out of the bottom. You can see I have a ridiculously simple setup. It's almost embarrassingly simple, but this is kind of my baseline. So if I am going to make some changes, I always bring it back to where it is now, as to keep myself sane. Because like I said, the learning curve is kind of high. But anyway, the point is, this thing is amazing. Also, Scarlett GUI is amazing for Focusrite interfaces. So if you have a Focusrite, and you might, because they're so popular, and you want to move to Linux, you definitely need to get ALSA Scarlett GUI or ALSA Scarlett Control Panel. It's free, but like I said, you really should donate him some money, because this is a product that is definitely worth paying for. So let's see. I think that is all I have to say. I did want to go over some basics for kind of actually enabling audio, but I wanted to keep this more high level, just show you my system, show you what I have, to give you some ideas if you're stuck and you have no idea where to start. These are the tools I use, and you can go, if you're going to use a different distro than Debian, you can go Google around and you can check out the page for ALSA Scarlett GUI, and you can check out the page for for any of the other stuff I talked about, and see how you would install things, or if they're available, or if you have to build from source, or if they're in your repositories, or if they're in Flatpak or something. You can check out cables. You can check out Patchhands if you want to use that instead. It's a little easier, a little less featured, but it's really nice. So anyway, so I hope this video is helpful. I probably should do some other videos, maybe where I dive a little more into a couple of these topics. Maybe I'll show converting some plugins with YawBridge or something like that. But yeah, I hope this has been helpful. I hope it helps you get underway on your Linux journey. If you're looking to get away from Windows, works great, and you don't have to worry about Windows, and there's no AI on here. There's no pop-ups telling you to log into OneDrive, all that stuff. So anyway, that's all, and I hope this is helpful. Thank you for watching. Bye.